Shalom, everyone. So good to be together. My name is Rabbi Danielle Upton, and I'm thrilled to be sharing some teaching and some meditation on Hanukkah to get us ready to enliven our spirit and to welcome the light of growing light, of sacred light, of being the light as we get ready for this year's Hanukkah experience. I'm going to go ahead and share the text for us to take a look at today. Here it is. There's there's a link to the text on Safaria. We're going to go ahead and take a look at a couple of texts that are affirming for ourselves this idea of bringing holiness into the world, of elevating in sanctity. And so when I say the word holiness or sanctity in Hebrew, the word is kedusha. I want you to think about this word as something that's special, right? Something that's set aside from the ordinary, something that brings light out into the world, brings light into the world, and elevates the sparks in the world. So holiness might feel like a weird word for somebody or too far away or not accessible. Holiness is something well within our grasp. Within Judaism, we are taught, we're mandated to bring holiness into the world in this world, not to remove ourselves from the world and do holiness somewhere else as ascetics, but to draw holiness and a sense of sacredness, of specialness, of elevatedness, I like to use that word, in the way we live here and now. So there's a bit of that message in the way that we light the Chanukiah. So let's go ahead and take a look at this famous text from the Talmud, from Tractate Shabbat. The page is 21b, and there we learn the correct way to light a Chanukiah. Okay, so you may have thought, well, of course I know how to light a Chanukiah. Well, of course you know how to light a Chanukiah because it was delivered to us, like the instructions were delivered to us in the times of the first centuries when the laws of lighting Chanukiah were being discussed. So there are some differences of opinions. We'll take a look at these opinions, right? Then we'll sit with a meditation. Then I'd like to look at one more teaching and then one more meditation. And then we'll conclude with a closing blessing. And then for those who'd like to stay on and have some conversation about the text or about our meditative experience, that's what we have going on within the next half hour. So Shabbat 21b, we learn, Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught in a Braita, that the basic mitzvah of Chanukah is each day to have a light kindled by a person, which was usually the head of the house. Okay, so you can picture one light, one person, done. Okay, next level, Mahadrin, those who are meticulous in the performance of mitzvot, right? You want to do a little bit 2.0 on this, then light for each and every person in the household. So not just one, but everybody can light one. Okay, perfect. Got a family of five candles. You have a family of 20 candles. Family of one candle, right? That's what we're looking at. Mahadrin min Mahadrin. Those were like the I don't know what's above 2.0, right? The 10.0 version of this. Those who are more meticulous adjust the number of lights daily. So now what does that mean? Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel have a disagreement. So now we're not talking about just one light per night. We're looking at movements of light, growing light or diminishing light. Let's take a look. Beit Shammai says, on the first day, one kindles 8 lights. First day of Hanukkah, 8 lights, all of them lit. Amazing. But from then on, decrease to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Till the last day of Hanukkah, you have 1 light. You might be thinking, huh? Okay, you can think that. We'll get to it in a second. Beit Hillel says, what we do. On the first night, we light 1 candle, and then gradually we increase. So that on the 8th night of Hanukkah, we have 8 lights, including the shamash. Ula said, so here's a rabbi explaining that there were 2 Amarim in the West, in Eretz Israel, meaning because these rabbis were in Babylonia, and they disagreed with regard to why does Shammai say that you light 8 on the first night and then you decrease? And why does Hillel say you light 1 on the first night and then you increase? So they're trying to understand. So they say the reason for Shammai's opinion is that the number of lights correspond to the incoming days, which is kind of a cool idea. Meaning, on the first night, you have 8 days ahead of you. The second night, you have 7 days ahead of you. And the third night, you have 6 days ahead of you, and so on. All right, makes sense. And the reason for Hillel's opinion is that the number of lights corresponds to the outgoing days, right? So each day, the number of lights corresponds to, the first night of Hanukkah, second night of Hanukkah, third night of Hanukkah. That's what we do. So we understand that one. But then there's another opinion offered of why Shammai says 8 in the beginning and decrease each night. And that one says it corresponds to the sacrifices that were offered during the holiday of Sukkot. Sukkot? Why are we talking about Sukkot? Well, because when you think about Hanukkah, Hanukkah was celebrated right after Sukkot, okay? So Sukkot is 8 days. All right, so that's where you might think that's where we get the 8 days of Hanukkah from, okay? Although others, of course, say it's because we found that cruise of oil, and the cruise of oil didn't last 1, but it lasted 8 until we found new oil, sanctified holy oil for the use of the menorah. But there's an opinion that says when the Maccabees and the Hasmoneans dedicated the temple, the first thing that they do is observe the holiday that they missed because the temple was in the hands of the Greek Assyrians. They couldn't celebrate Sukkot when it was the right time. So they're deciding this is the first thing we're going to do in the temple is celebrate the holiday that we missed. And it kind of makes sense when you think about Shammai's opinion of decreasing the number of candles per night, right? Corresponding to the number of sacrifices that were offered. 13 were sacrificed on the first day, and each succeeding day, 1 fewer was offered. Well, then you might ask, well, why didn't Shammai say we light 13 candles, right? On the first night. We're getting ahead of ourselves. But here's what I'd like to focus on. The reason for Beit Hillel's opinion is that the number of lights is based on the principle of ma'alin bikdusha, that one elevates to a higher level in matters of holiness or sanctity. We don't downgrade, we always elevate. Therefore, the objective is to have 1 candle on the first night, 2 on the second, 3 on the third, 4th, and onward from there. So we elevate in holiness. We elevate in holiness. So I want to share this teaching with you, not the second one, but the third one, of what does it mean to add holiness in our lives? And then we'll sit with this idea in meditation. And this is from one of my teachers from Israel, Rabbi and Professor David Galinkin, who links this idea of elevating holiness, of being ma'alin bikdusha velo moridin, that we always strive to elevate in holiness and not decrease. So he relates this idea to mitzvot, to commandments. Mitzvot lead us to holiness. They sanctify our lives and bring us closer to the divine. This was the approach taught by the Tana Isi ben Yehuda in the Mechilta. So we're talking about an early rabbinic text that each new command, God adds holiness to the people of Israel. So this approach is reflected in the standard formula when we say, Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu, or the melody when we light the candles, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'etzivanu, right? Continuing from there, this idea that every blessing that we say that reminds us that we're adding sanctity into our lives by performing these ritual observances, such as lighting the Chanukiah, such as lighting Shabbat candles tonight, such as making challah for those who do that, or any specific mitzvah, right, that you engage in, whatever your favorite mitzvah is, whenever we come into that mitzvah, that ritual, right, which isn't a ritual that we do just like outside of time. They're the things that we do every single day. It could be putting on a talit or wearing tefillin for those who do that. When we're engaging in business, when we eat anything, right? We're thanking God for giving us this food. And when we eat, when we wash our hands before we eat, right? Making the mundane sacred through the consciousness of blessing, through the consciousness of a sense of commandedness and a consciousness of a sense of infusing sanctity and holiness and light into our lives. I'm going to stop the share and we'll get back to this in a moment. The idea here, the operating idea for our meditation, is thinking about, reflecting on, right? Not conscious mind thinking, but maybe opening our heart to a reflection on this idea of elevating holiness in our lives. That ma'alim bikdusha v'lo moridin, that we elevate our lives in sanctity and we don't diminish. So as we find our comfortable seated position, just for a quick guided meditation here, take a look at one more piece. Finding your feet connected to the ground here. We want to be grounded, entering into the light and sanctity of our lives that exists right here and now. Finding the breath, inhale, exhale. Noticing the breath, inhale and exhale. And dropping an awareness into the heart space, the space in which that sense of kedusha, of sanctity, of light, of elevation exists eternally. And in this guided meditation, I offer you the image of a stairway of light. Seeing yourself lighting Hanukkah candles, where each light grows the next. Each light adds to the illumination in the world. That each light, each step you take through this guided lighting journey increases awareness of light, illumination, and a sense of specialness, connection, illumination. All words for kedusha, for holiness. For the next few minutes, see yourself walking this path of light, each step increasing light, pausing along the way to notice how you feel, what you see, and what the light illumines before you. If the mind wanders, coming back to the breath and finding stillness, an inner sense of light. Beginning to bring our attention back to our shared space. Opening eyes if they've been closed. Maybe taking a moment here to use the chat if you'd like, or if you have some pen and paper near you, to jot down an experience of that illumination if you want to share, be a feeling that you had or something that your imagination generated in a moment of illumination and peace. Being ma'alim biktushav, elevating in holiness, elevating in specialness and in light as a direction for us today and through the rest of this season. While you're doing that, I'm going to share one more piece of text that I found to be really stunning. And I attribute this one to my teachers at my Institute for Jewish Spirituality. So I came upon this one looking back in my own archives of study. So the Sfat Emet of on Hanukkah in 1871. So this teaching reminds us of what it means to be a light in this darkest time of the year. So Chag Urim is the name of Hanukkah in Hebrew. When you are in Israel and it's Hanukkah time, people don't generally say Hanukkah Sameach. They'll say Chag Urim Sameach, Happy Festival of Lights. That's the name, proper name. Happy Festival of Lights, Chag Urim Sameach. So the Sfat Emet mystical, Hasidic teaching reminds us of something very palpable, something that we can access in our own days as well. He says that the miracle of Hanukkah was in the light, that one could find the illumination hidden in the darkness and the exile. And on this matter, he quotes his father, Rav Yitzchak Meir Alter, said on the Talmudic statements, so quoted in the tractate of Megillah, speaking not about Hanukkah, but about Purim, says there that we don't say Hallel on Purim because we were still slaves to Achashverosh. So even though in the Purim story, right, sidebar for that for a moment, took place in Persia, we didn't have our own rule in Purim, in the Purim story. Like we won the fight, right? But there was still like this greater sense of living in galut, in exile, and in the darkness of exile, even though there was a momentary victory of light. So too, regarding the miracle of Hanukkah, he says that there was no full release or nullification of Greek sovereignty, right? We have to be clear about the Hanukkah story, that it's not like the Hasmoneans won the rulership of Judea and Samaria and that whole, no, it was all still under the Assyrian Greek Empire, but the Jews were able to reaffirm their own jurisdiction over their holy spaces. So he says, so it seems to me that on account of the miracle, the Jews felt that they were servants of God, even though they were still in the exile, even though they were still in the exile. And this itself was the miracle, that they could be servants of God in exile. And servant is like a weird word, right? So meaning that they could worship God, they could serve God, right? To serve the divine in exile, in the midst of darkness. And this remains for generations, the ability to experience something otherworldly, even in this world. Right? That they were able to experience connection to divinity, to feel the sense of divine illumination in their world, which was a pretty dark world. Right? Our world today, right? We don't have necessarily a sense of feeling redeemed and that the world is in perfection and in a perfected state, far from it. And yet, Hanukkah invites us to tap into a taste of that divine light that exists within us and around us, that we can see and feel in the sharing of the Hanukkah lights and in the reflecting on the Hanukkah miracle. And then he quotes, and this is pretty cool, regarding the phrase in the song Ma'otzor, so you'll know Ma'otzor Yeshuati, and most people pretty much sing the first paragraph, but there are several paragraphs. And in the fifth paragraph, it says, Men of insight, days 8, Yemei Shmona, days 8. It doesn't say on 8 days, using that poetic formulation there, days 8, established for us song and jubilation. And the Rebbe says, it seems, in my humble opinion, it should have said 8 days, Shmonei Yamim. So it must mean that those days were established in the aspect of eightness, otherworldliness, that every day of 8 contains an aspect of eightness, of eightness. So I'm going to stop the share. Yemei Shmona, and every day of Hanukkah, has within it a sense of eightness. What's 8? If you flip the number 8 on the side, right, it's infinity. 8 is the number of eternity. 8 is the number of infinity. 8 is the number beyond 7. 7 is the finite world in which we live. On the 7th day, we have Shabbat. So we have that taste of Olam Haba on the 7th, right, that we're coming into tonight. But 8 is that like magical beyond. So each day of Hanukkah has within it, the Rebbe says, a taste of that beyondness, of infinity, of complete redemption. So my blessing for us is to move into the last few minutes of meditation here on a sense of beyondness, of stepping into Shabbat, that's right ahead of us, but also the days of Hanukkah, to see each day of Hanukkah and feel each day of Hanukkah as a sense of the infinite, an infinite tapping into infinite light, infinite love, infinite chesed, infinite peace. Taking these next few moments here to pick up where you left off in meditation, returning to the breath. And feeling yourself into, right now, the corner of infinity and eternity that each day of Hanukkah allows us to feel and to see. Sinking into the eightness that may be possible right now. Just taking these next few minutes on your own, and I'll bring us back together. Beginning to bring that juiciness of the eightness of light, illumination, holiness, specialness, sacredness into our heart as a treasure trove to release whenever we're called to, especially as we go into Shabbat and the 8 days of Hanukkah. To see the light, to shed the light, and to be the light. And place hand over heart if you'd like, and hand over hand. As we conclude our meditation with the word of peace, healing, and wholeness, shalom, together 3 times. Shalom. 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 Releasing hands, opening eyes if they've been closed. And this concludes our meditation for today. Thank you everyone for joining, and I look forward to seeing you next time.